opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackey's Shiny Setup. That's right, on Revolution.radio. If you can donate, please do. This is show number 520. That's what I thought. 526, 620, and 500. Like I said, donations are always welcome. Any kind of currency will do, including crypto, money orders, check, cash, whatever you like to do. Gold! Bring forth the gold.
I'm mining Ethereum before it goes away.
I saw a really interesting meme before we start this. This is in aid of what we said earlier about Elon Musk. Okay, so apparently Elon Musk owns $300 billion, for argument's sake, right?
Yep.
And Twitter costs 25 million, or billion rather, dollars, something like that, right? And there are 8 billion people on the planet. Now this genius, that said, bear with me, right? So 8 billion people. He has now 275 billion left. And this person in the meme on Facebook said, well, he could buy Twitter and still give every person on the planet $1 billion. No, not really. He couldn't. It's not possible. No. Sorry. Check your math before you post anything on Facebook. Comes the runaway meme. Okay, we are talking about ancient aliens or similar things, the evidence for and against. Everybody has got very strong opinions. We've got so many debunking sites, it's not funny. And what we're going to talk about today, I think we should talk about Pumapunku because that's got the most content here for us. There's another interesting artifact. It's called the Sarcophagus of Pakhal, the great ruler of the Mayan city of Palenque. If you're not familiar with this lid of his sarcophagus, I urge you to have a look at it. Now, Eric von Däniken was the first to point out that it looks like a guy reclining in what, for all intents and purposes, looks like a small rocket ship.
That's true.
Hands on the controls and feet on the controls. It looks like an exhaust plume as well. What the traditional archaeologists are saying is that it is a fall. Pakhal is falling into the underworld.
Sure.
Because it's on
if you ignore everything else.
Yes, but it's on a sarcophagus, don't you understand? It's on there, so it must be that.
Sure.
So, have a look at it yourself. See what
it definitely looks like a machine.
100%.
Yes.
And his hands and feet are...
controls.
Yeah, in my opinion, most definitely. In fact, quite... Considering this is stone, this was, chiseled in the stone, quite intricate detail there.
Extremely elaborate. And you can see that it runs with a central pillar.
Yes.
All the way through to the exiting flames.
Correct. Again, archaeologists would say now he's falling into the underworld because he's dying, and etc. etc. You look at it yourself, see what you think. And I always urge people, as you know, when it comes to things like this,
it looks like a machine in cross section.
Yeah. Think about, or look at it with modern eyes. Think about it in modern terms. Whenever you look at ancient things, don't just be put off by the fact that there's a Stone Age, artifact, or it's a Copper Age artifact, or whatever. It's impossible for these people to have had this technology. I mean, I think we've spoken enough, and in fact about enough evidence here. In fact, hard evidence, like physical sites as well. We're going to talk about that today, to really understand that something very, very, very odd did happen in the past. We had capabilities we no longer really have. We're getting them back. We are getting them back. We are seeing these ancient stories and sites and artifacts in a completely new light. Because we have rediscovered the technology, or close to it anyway, to, make it not a fairy tale. We have doors that open on voice commands. Hell, we got doors that open on proximity. Okay, we have got
that's right.
Doors that open when they scan your iris. right? And we have flying machines of all manner and descriptions. And only 100 years, well, 140-ish years have passed since the Wright brothers went and pioneered heavier than air powered flight. 140 years. Look at us. Astounding, don't you think? And we've been around in our present condition for at least 300,000 years. When I was young, when I was a child, but a wee little boy, the number was 100,000 years. And Neanderthal was our ancestor. That was I remember this very clearly because I was very interested in all this kind of stuff. I wanted to be, either a zoologist or paleontologist. I was really interested.
Mm-hmm.
So 100,000 years was given to human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, and Neanderthal was our ancestor. We know this is no longer true. And the more we find out, the more we dig, the further back we need to push all these dates. Right? But just let's say, for argument's sake, we have been around for 300,000 years. Written history, if we're generous, goes back 10,000 years. Like we're pretty comfortable to go back 10,000 years and say with some degree of certainty this is what happened.
Do you see the footprints, Mackie? The footprints in New Mexico now?
I did. Pushes it right back.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And this is really the problem here, right?
Yeah.
And then we're gonna go into that in a second as well, because we went to a lot of debunking sites. Because I mean, what is the real story? I mean, I'm not pushing an agenda. I don't really care about agendas. I want to know what it is. I want to know the truth of the matter. So does Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Am I saying that ancient aliens visited the Earth at some point in the past? I'm not saying that. Am I saying it's possible? Sure, it's possible. What I think is more likely, this is my opinion only, that we achieved ourselves very high civilizational standards, and in fact were inner earthers rather than outer earthers, if you will, right? Because it makes much more sense to be in a subterranean civilization than a civilization that cradles around the surface of any given planet. Makes no sense at all. But by that token, I think we were a spacefaring race, and maybe still are, or at least ones that are living underground and under the water, and they would have had contact with other, let's call them aliens, if you will, and that goes right back to antiquity. I mean, the civilization I envision is probably 25, 30,000 years old, and probably older than that yet. I mean, there are civilizations we don't even know about in myth anymore. Right? I mean, they found these. This is really the crazy thing. They found a whole bunch of stuff, right? And they found these metal spheres. They look like nothing like it. They look like a cricket ball, really.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you know what a cricket ball is, it's got a very thick seam.
Yep.
And what are they? But the point is that these metal balls with this very thick seam around it, they were found in strata that are billions of years old.
They look like the French game where you
right.
toss the balls. Bocce or something?
The boccia, but that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, are they boccia balls?
No.
Well, maybe played 3 billion years ago. But the point is, they're there.
It's a very
there are
old
other
game.
things as well.
You thought Monopoly was long.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, are we done yet? No, another 2 billion. But yeah, there are other things as well. We've talked about those at length. I mean, could it be ancient aliens that left these artifacts? Yes.
Yeah.
Could it be a human or pre-human civilization? Because there's that aspect as well, of course. That we're not the first. And in fact, I don't think we are. I don't think we are the first human race to walk on this planet. Or human-like.
Yeah, that's right. So even if the Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki coming here and creating humans 250,000 years ago, as the date seems to push it back, starting in like Middle Africa and heading up towards Iraq. They built more than one city. They mined a ton of gold. If that was what it was, then there was a higher tech society. We have another, we only took 2,000 years from the, basically wooden carts to where we are with space travel. You look at how many times it's completely possible that we could have reached some kind of technological peak. And looking at some of the places, and certainly Pumapunku we're going to talk about, on the high plane, is crazy that you could exist there at all.
Yeah.
Because the city looks like it was strewn like children's blocks.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there are many really strange things about. I mean, the level of technology is also quite astounding, right? And the rocks that we use now, people always believe it was dorsite and granite. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It was the red sandstone and andesite.
Mm-hmm.
But andesite is still very hard, comparatively speaking. I mean, red sandstone is easy to work, right? But not only that, it is the nature of the work and the precision with which it was carried out, and then the complete mystery as to why you would do it this way or why you would construct anything in this fashion. But look, let's talk about Pumapunku. Now, Pumapunku, which really means the door of the Puma, right, in the native dialect, is part of a larger archaeological complex known as Tiahuanaco, and everybody knows Tiahuanaco. Of course, it's right near, not next to, but near Lake Titicaca. It's quite a distance from Lake Titicaca, at least now it is. It is also considered one of the most important sites of Andean archaeology, or the Andes in South America. The unique nature of the site raises curiosity regarding its builders, when it was constructed, and its purpose. These mysteries have arisen ever since the Inca civilization first laid eyes on the ruins of a site that was abandoned centuries before they came across it. So very clearly, the Incas did not build it. Now, as we were doing the research for this particular show, we went to a lot of debunking sites, right? And this is interesting. A couple of sites don't mention Arthur Posnanski at all. Mm-hmm. Not at all. I mean, not even a word. Not even in passing or some crazy archaeologist. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Others call him an amateur archaeologist, right? And sort of dismiss him.
Yeah, right? That's discounting his work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to share with you who Arthur Posnanski was.
Please. Because
he was instrumental in opening up Pumapunku and giving it the status that it has today.
When was he alive? What period are we talking about?
Oh, this is he was born in 1873 and he died in 1946.
Oh.
Okay. And he did various things in his life. He was an engineer, an explorer, a ship's navigator, and the director of a river navigation company, an entrepreneur, a La Paz City Council member, and well-known and well-respected avocational archaeologist. Now, avocational means he didn't specifically study archaeology, same as Thomas Schliemann, who found Troy, by the way. Okay. During his lifetime, Posnanski was known as a prolific writer and researcher and for his active participation in the defense and development of Bolivia. He's well known for his books, including Tiahuanaco, The Cradle of American Man, Campaña de Acre, La Cancha, Iris, Die Osterinsel und ihre prähistorischen Monumente, and Razas y Monumentos Prehistóricos del Altiplano Andino. Many, if not most, of his theories have been rejected by modern scholars. This is where we are today, Dave.
Early life. He was born in Vienna, Austria on April the 13th, he's an Aries, 1873. He helped his father in his business as a manufacturing chemist. At this time, he was deeply involved in cognate studies. His interest in cognate studies ended when his father suddenly died. After his father's death, Posnanski studied at the Imperial and Royal Academy of Pola, now Pula, for the position of naval military engineer in the Austro-Hungarian Navy. During his time in the Imperial and Royal Academy of Pola, he made several extensive training voyages, which took him many places, including the Easter Islands in the South Pacific Ocean, as part of his shipboard training. While on Easter Island, he made ethnological observations, which he later published in Die Ostraninsel und ihr prehistoric, good on you, monument. It looks like prehistoric, points in time or something like that. I don't know the true translation. Meki, can you work it out? No, he's muted. He's probably having a cough. Posnanski graduated.
Oh, sorry. It means the East Islands and their prehistoric monuments. I was on mute.
Yes, you were. And so Posnanski graduated from the Imperial and Royal Academy of Pola at age 18. Meki, what about his scientific research?
Yep. So, after settling in Bolivia, Posnanski repeatedly traveled the Bolivian and Peruvian highlands in efforts to locate, describe, and study Inca and pre-Inca archaeological sites. He was especially interested in those found along the shoreline and on the islands of Lake Titicaca. The results of these investigations were published in books such as The Islands of Titicaca and Coati, and Razas y Monumentos Prehistóricos del Altiplano Andino. For such research, the Bolivian Senate awarded him a gold medal in 1905, and he later became director of the National Museum. He also authored books which included Os Indios Pomares e Purunes no Rio Purus, which was published in 1898, and Mapa del Rio Acre, which were 7 volumes and published in 1897, about South American geography and ethnology. He also lectured about archaeological subjects in Berlin, Frankfurt, Nuremberg, and Treptow in Germany. These cities were all in Germany. In recognition of his accomplishments, the German government conferred on him an honorary title of professor in 1914. So he was not an amateur academic. I want to make this very clear. This was a guy that was neck deep in academia, right? Lecturing at quite large universities in Germany, and also being a director of the National Museum in Bolivia. Okay, so not amateur, right? Let's be very clear here. Posnanski's final and most important book, Tiahuanaco, The Cradle of American Man, was published in 1945, volumes 1 and 2, and 1957, volumes 3 and 4. In it, Posnanski argued that Tiahuanaco was constructed approximately 15,000 BC. Well, that's actually not true. He said 13,000 BC. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's correct. That's right. 15,000 before the Common Era. That's correct. Not 15,000 before Christ, but before the Common Era. So 15,000 years ago. Okay, by American peoples, although not by the ancestors of those then living in the area, the Aymara. Posnanski also saw Tiahuanaco as the origin point of civilization throughout the Americas, including the Inca, the Maya, and others. Since the publication of the work, these ideas have since been disputed by later archaeological research. However, this is interesting now. However, the photographs, detailed descriptions of structures and inscriptions, meticulously prepared maps, and numerous photographs found in his work constitute an extremely valuable historical record of the site. Okay. This is interesting. So it's similar to Forbidden Archaeology by Cremo, where they hail the academic scholarship, but they completely poo-poo the findings. Now, Posnanski's ideas about Tiahuanaco having been a full-fledged city was with a large permanent population, rather than only a seasonally occupied ceremonial center, and its abandonment having been the result of prehistoric climate change, are widely accepted in principle. Prehistoric climate change. This book and his personal efforts also contributed significantly to the eventual preservation of the site at a time when it was being very badly damaged by neglect, stone quarrying, and looting. So you should say that he was the most important person in the preservation and I guess
chronicling
and bringing to worldwide attention the site of Tiahuanaco and therefore Pumapunku. Dave?
Yeah, so look, the only thing that they didn't like was how his description it fitted their timeline.
Correct.
Their accepted timeline. But now we're watching all of that wash away.
That's right.
Because they were wrong. That's a theme to the beginning of the last show, the last hour. So, a Pumapunku, a mystery that may be greater than the pyramids, by Tasha Shane. This is published January 11th, 2021. Now, I'm going to do a middle screen image here of the H blocks and the extraordinary level of stone masonry that meant that these slotted together. There's evidence of drills, like meters through a block, and what we would use now today as a router to make cuts, they seem to be able to make the exact same kind of cut with tools unknown. Let's put it that way. So Pumapunku is also spelled Pumapunku. And rather than being one word, it's two words. it's the remains of a holy site in the jungles of Bolivia that has attracted much attention as of late. The name means door of the Puma. And as far as archaeologists know, Pumapunku was a thriving ancient town originating somewhere around 500 to 600 CE. Here we are, a century and a half later, and irresponsible rumours continue to grow that Pumapunku's massively heavy stone block structures were cut so precisely that highly advanced ancient technology seems to be the only explanation for their craftsmanship. I'll take this next bit too, Mackie. When was Pumapunku built? Controversial dates. When an Austrian explorer named Arthur Posnanski performed a study on Pumapunku back in 1926, he put forward the idea that it's one of the oldest archaeological sites on the face of the earth, dating back to at least 13,000 BC, it says. Even if that's BCE, doesn't matter.
No, that's BC.
It's BC.
That is BC.
Right.
But it's 15,000 BCE. That's correct.
Right. Posnanski was one of the first modern explorers to examine the site, but his hypothesis continues to have many supporters. I like the word "but" in there. Very interestingly placed. Archaeologist Neil Steed, for example, has discussed how the astronomical alignments of the main temple at the site do suggest that it was built to coincide with the summer and winter solstices and the spring equinox, as these events would have been seen 17,000 years ago. Another group of archaeologists used the carbon dating method to date the construction of Pumapunku between 400 and 600 AD. I wonder what they chose, Becky, to date. The dirt?
There was a fire. There was a campfire. What?
The campfire.
That's okay, isn't it? You
Yeah.
can't date stones with a radiocarbon.
No, you can't. And only the deposit layer, but they're all strewn everywhere. So good luck with that, right? People who disagree with this later date often argue that the radiocarbon dating results provided by anthropology professor William H. Isbell of the University of Illinois are inaccurate and provide an unreliable date range. And I tend to agree. Mickey?
I agree with that as well. The location. Well, where is it? Where is it? It's located 45 miles west of the modern-day city of La Paz. Pumapunku is situated in the still thriving city of Tiahuanaco. So it's a continuing city, right? It's a living city. High up on the desert plateau of the Andes, or the Andes Mountains, at an altitude of more than 12,000 feet. That's pretty high. Mm-hmm. Tiahuanaco is significant in Inca traditions, the place where it was once believed the world was created. In this isolated part of the world stand amazing smooth stone structures featuring precision-made cuts, clean right angles, and expertly fitted joints. The megaliths are among the largest on Earth, with some weighing several hundred tons. I think the heaviest is 140 tons, actually. Mm-hmm. 142, something like that. While many of the structures are still standing centuries after their inhabitants disappeared, most of the buildings are scattered and broken around the area, leaving researchers to wonder what possibly could have tossed around impossibly heavy buildings. And that's really probably maybe not the greatest mystery, but certainly a big head scratcher. I mean, it does look like a giant came along and just kicked over like a whole Lego set. Mm-hmm. That's literally what it looks like. Anyway, Dave, go on.
Modern technology facilitates Pumapunku reconstruction. Until recently, due to the condition and placement of so many stones laid strewn across the landscape, there was really no way of seeing what Pumapunku may have looked like during its peak. Owing to the work of the University of California, Berkeley researchers, Pumapunku mapping has brought the ancient archaeological site into perspective. Using historical data, 3D printed pieces, and architectural software, Berkeley archaeologist Alexei Vranich virtual reconstruction of Pumapunku provides a glimpse into the structure's origin or original appearance. Vranich said the ruins were reminiscent of a giant Lego set, and he said, yes, exactly, right? That's what it does look like. Everyone thinks it looks like that. We attempted to capitalize on archaeologists' learned ability to visualize and mentally rotate irregular objects in space by providing them with 3D printed objects that they could physically manipulate. Becky.
Were the monuments beyond the capability of human beings? And that's really the question here, right? Gizmodo notes that Pumapunku was an advanced Andean architectural achievement. Spanish conquistadors and others who visited the site during the 16th and 17th centuries described it as a wondrous, though unfinished, building with gateways and windows carved from single blocks. Pumapunku displayed a level of craftsmanship that was largely unparalleled in the pre-Columbian New World. It is often considered the architectural peak of Andean lithic technology prior to the arrival of the Europeans. I would argue that they haven't really equaled that yet. Anyway, this is just my opinion. Even today, the stonework of the temple is considered so precise that ancient alien enthusiasts claim it was made by lasers and other extraterrestrial technologies. David Childress, the author of Lost Cities and Ancient Mysteries of South America, noted that the massive chunks of granite, no, there's no granite, it's andesite, so it's not granite, were seemingly scattered around like children's toy blocks, as if a giant cataclysm laid waste to Pumapunku in one fell swoop. Archaeologists are baffled by what Pumapunku was and how it looked, said Childress. The purpose of the enormous structures has yet to be explained. Dave?
I've shown the precisely cut H blocks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What's it called? A dovetail joint.
Yes.
So these blocks placed next to each other exhibited dovetail joints where you could slide another piece into that dovetail and it held it in place. Just extraordinary. One fact that is undeniable, however, is that the entire region and its people were important in the ancient world of South America. Theirs was the dominant culture of Lake Titicaca Basin, the whole valley, with an empire covering vast amounts of area in the present-day Bolivia, Peru, and Chile. Just after World War II, Austrian archaeologist Arthur Posnanski had a hypothesis that was far ahead of his time. His writings about Pumapunku's stones in Tiwanaku have been kept alive by Graham Hancock and others who defer to Posnanski's dating of the site to support their stories. No, stories, Mackie. It is stories. Posnanski, who worked at the site for decades, estimated that Pumapunku was far older than the academics surmised. By examining the ruins and their relationship to the stars, archaeologists dated the ruins to be an astounding 15,000 years old. As with so many areas featuring crafted structures of such weight and size or immensity, some of which are more than 20 feet tall and tens of thousands of pounds. Skeptics of academic conclusions begin with the same question: how were these structures built and who really built them? And the question remains how primitive people could have created smooth and flawless right angles at circular holes, not just holes but drill holes all the way through stone in Pumapunku with crude hammers and chisels. Even today, the fashioning of these megaliths can only be accomplished with advanced diamond-tipped saws, drill bits, router bits. Were there Pumapunku ancient aliens whose technology remains ignored?
That's right. And then there's another interesting aspect to this. So yes, I mean, the stonecraft, the stone masonry, that's quite astounding.
Mm-hmm.
These holes are drilled in andesite, right? Like I said, not granite and into red sandstone, but they're very meticulously, they're 90-degree angles. Now, they're not all identical, interestingly enough, which means they were fashioned by hand. Yeah, okay, but they were certainly planned well ahead. So clearly, whoever built the site had a plan in mind, right? Now, the interesting thing is this: in a lot of places, they poured copper. It's actually a copper arsenic metal alloy.
Yep.
To hold stones together.
Yeah, so they cut an H. They cut a H shape across
exactly
the joint and poured the metal in, and it cooled.
Yeah.
and became an anchor.
Now, to have a mobile smelter
Oh, yeah.
that can produce in excess of 2,000 degrees Celsius, because that's what you would need to melt that metal, which is it's not a campfire. Okay, presents even today would present a fairly intricate problem, especially on that high an altitude, because at that high an altitude the oxygen content of the air is lower, and it might take you higher temperatures to effectively melt this copper.
Yeah, even boiling water at that altitude is difficult.
Correct. So it's really interesting, but again, it's always glossed over by the skeptics, which brings me to our next point. Skeptical logic has not solved the mystery. Right? I was going to put a skeptics section in here as well, but there are very specific things they focus on. Oh, it's not granite.
Yeah, only certain things. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's not 17,000 years old. He only said 15,000 years old. These are mistakes people make. Okay, people talk, and maybe they made a mistake, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a fairly unique site.
And you say, well, what about the stones to the skeptic? And they go, what about them?
Well, that's exactly right. So I didn't actually include
the date was wrong.
Yeah. So if you want to look at the skeptics, please. Go ahead and bad archaeology is a good site to look at. There's many others. Just type in Pumapunku debunking, and you'll get a plethora. But again, like I said, not a lot of them are to the point. Right now, some skeptics claim that the ancient or the alien theory is nonsense, leaving Pumapunku debunked. Skeptic Brian Dunning, the host of the Skeptoid podcast, described the site's row of H-shaped blocks that have approximately 80 faces on them, and all matching each other with great precision. These stones, he wrote, are just prefabrication not found at the other Tiahuanaca sites. In addition, some of the stones were held together with copper fasteners, which we just mentioned, some of which were cold hammered into shape, and others that were poured into place molten. Dunning applied logic to the mystery, suggesting that perhaps the Pumapunku blocks were not chiseled, but rather poured using concrete or some such similar material. However, no evidence thus far has been found in support of the poured concrete theory. And again, these are red sandstones and andesite. Those are the stones. Regardless of the opinions of skeptics, the Pumapunku mystery persists. Okay? Because no scientist to date has given a probable explanation for the buildings and how they were constructed. Moreover, Dunning argues that Pumapunku may not be a fantastic feat too great for humankind. He points out that the Greek Parthenon was built 1,000 years before Pumapunku in the accepted timeline. And yet nobody invokes aliens as the only explanation for its great beauty and decorative detailing that more than rivals Pumapunku's angles and cuts. Different kind of building methodology, and there weren't any drilling bits.
And they were stacked stones, and they weren't dovetailed.
Correct. So it's not the same. Dave?
Yeah, that's right. So no closer to solving Pumapunku mystery. While the site of Pumapunku in western Bolivia remains a crowning achievement of Andean architecture, and it rivals sites from around the world, scientists has very few answers regarding the most basic questions of who, what, when, and why. Modern archaeologists are not about to entertain the idea of using lasers, ancient alien visitations, or otherworldly means of transporting blocks of stone for miles without any mechanized vehicles. So where does that leave us? We may add one more possibility, or one more clue to this mystery. The mummies of Pumapunku, preserved on one of Tiwanaku's most sacred sites, provide evidence that all members of society, from infants to elderly, regularly used psychoactive hallucinogenic, that's the way I added a syllable, plants, hallucinogenic. It remains to be shown whether their forays into other dimensions offered these early people a special insight into how to create their megaliths, or even how to contact beings who could teach them advanced methodologies. What a way to end that up.
This is actually really interesting. There's a whole theory out there that these mind-altering, or more accurately, mind-expanding drugs, especially obviously the natural drugs, right, were in part responsible for our development as a species.
Oh yeah, completely.
And we do know that Buckminster Fuller and also Crick of DNA fame had their insights while they were under the influence of these. I think it was LSD, but I could be wrong.
Well, you know the Montauk experiments with LSD.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to.
Yeah, well, they were extremely successful, in fact, with scientists. So if that becomes a thing, if we accept that at some point in our culture's history moving forward, that will be an extremely interesting period.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what though is so unusual about the stones at Pumapunku? Well, there are a number of curious facts about the stones that were used. Firstly, they've been carved with precision not expected from primitive civilization. Full stop. Each stone in the walls of Pumapunku was cut to perfectly interlock with the next and hold together without the support of mortar. Similar to Inca walls, as you might recall. Many publications report the stones to be carved with machine-like finesse. And some even postulate the use of technology far more advanced than we believe contemporary civilizations to have known at the time when we think they carved them. Secondly, the stones are of megalithic proportion, with the largest reportedly weighing 131 tons. These larger blocks consist of red sandstone, which were determined by chemical analysis to have been transported up a steep incline from a quarry near Lake Titicaca, and that was almost 10 kilometers away. Perhaps more curious, secondly, the stones. No, that's right. So perhaps more curious is the way andesite was used. So there's not a stone in the temple's construction. Smaller andesite stones were used throughout Pumapunku, not as large structural pieces, but for facings and carvings. Many andesite carvings were used to depict an entity many archaeologists believe today to be a pan-Indian deity and forerunner to the Incan god of creation, Viracocha. The most notable of these depictions is in a structure referred to as the Gate of the Sun, thought to have been a calendar used to track a solar year different from what we use today. The Gate of the Sun was carved from a single slab of andesite estimated to weigh almost 10 tons. The central figure is depicted as a person holding two staffs, wearing a headdress or perhaps with rays of light emanating from its face.
Two things make the use of andesite so unique. First of all, archaeologists believe the andesite at Pumapunku could only have originated from a quarry roughly 90 kilometers away, 90. On the other side of the lake, Titicaca. For the time, this seems to be an enormous distance to move as much stone as there is at Pumapunku, let alone in solid slabs of 10 tons, or up to 10 tons. Secondly, the decision to use this stone from so far away, as opposed to the sandstone, for example, which is found locally, when depicting deities, may suggest some cultural significance of andesite to the ancient society of Tiwanaku. Pumapunku leaves countless questions in the minds of archaeologists even today. What technology was used for such immaculate stonework? How were these enormous volumes of stone transported so far up a steep incline? What importance did andesite hold to the Tiwanaku culture?
Interesting question.
They are really good questions, without answers, of course.
Yeah, and that brings us to the end of the Pumapunku discussion. It's the ancient Andean site that keeps everyone guessing still, even though people believe, they have solved the mystery. I think, personally, nothing could be further from the truth, because it is a unique site, and the way it was built. And if you just, do yourself a favor and Google it. Google the stones, the carvings. Have a look at it. See what you think. It is, it's very abstract, in many ways, and very industrial, right? Clean-cut lines. There was nothing floral or curly Q around about it. It was just an industrial type of design. If you look at it, not much ornamentation that I could see. I mean, certain recessed things, and carvings, like which suggest recessed doors, etc. But certainly, I mean, why build it there? One, right? And why build it with the materials that they have, and how, in fact, that they build it? And then the thing is, people always talk about the other things. I saw on another debunking site they compared it to the pyramids. As far as I'm concerned, the jury is still out on the pyramids too.
That's right.
Okay. And same with the temple at Baalbek. Same, with the Inca walls. I mean, any number, and certainly the Jupiter. The Sphinx and the attending temple at Luxor as well. It is still. We cannot rest on our laurels. So science is not a view frozen in time. Science ultimately is to discover the truth. Right? It's never done. That's my point. So you can have a theory, and that's good. The theory is good, always good. But it's important to understand that it's an evolving body of knowledge that we're all putting together. The unfortunate thing is, and I've said this many times before, says Dave, there are vested interests in all of these endeavors. Human beings, that need to make money. They need to, they have to.
Or they have a grant, or they've written books on it.
Yeah. So if someone came along then and said, "Oh, everything that all your theories are wrong," everything, it's. I mean, ideally, it is a scientist is really questing for the truth. Ideal scenario. That's what you want, right? But when money and livelihood and reputation is attached to that, it's a very different kind of scenario. Not only that, on top of that, you have the parasites guiding our endeavors in certain directions, right? I mean, not directly, but enough for people to self-censor or to understand what is acceptable to be explored and what is not. The word conspiracy theorist, just as an example, has a massively negative connotation. Why? There are conspiracies, and you're welcome to have theories about them, right? But as soon as you say that, you're thinking of a guy with a tinfoil hat. That is a bit, crazy in the head. Doesn't know what they're talking about. Nothing could really be further from the truth. You find that a lot of people that are questioning the status quo, or accepted knowledge, are pushing the frontiers. Okay, they're pushing the frontiers because the explanations we're given, they're not good enough. They're just not good enough. Or we can't really trust people that are amateurs. And in fact, that's the first thing. The guy was an amateur. He doesn't know what he was doing. I hope you can see now that Arthur Posnanski was not an amateur. He did spend decades there. He was an engineer by trade. The universities in Germany, he was, like I said, awarded an honorary doctorate. Okay, he was teaching at 4 German universities too. But his narrative doesn't fit in with the rest of the global narrative. And you have to understand what drives this. There are 2 things that drive this. One was colonization. We can't have civilizations older than the ones in Europe. Can't.
Apparently, for some reason.
Can't do it, right? Because if we did, then colonization was a crime against humanity. But these colonizers thought, we're bringing civilization to the rest of the world. Now, did they really think that? No, I don't think so. But that's what they said. And because they're good, God-fearing Christians, everybody goes, oh yeah, we should do that. We should teach them about about Christ, and it's good for them. Plus, they're barbarians and savages, etc., etc. And then have all these sites pop up. But we know for a fact that these sites are ancient. They're really old. Really, really old. And you can't carbon date stones. Can't do it. Can't be done. They carbon dated some campfire, maybe, or maybe maybe the animal, the bone of an animal that was under a rock or something. Right? I don't know. I don't know what happened. But the point is, rocks move. I mean, the entire site of Pumapunku has moved significantly. Right? It doesn't end there, though. It doesn't end there. There's more at stake here about our true history. I mean, what really happened? And we need to understand this if we want to go down the rabbit hole, because we're ignoring massive component parts of our history to our detriment.
You know, Meki, why would we fumble about and never conclude anything that suggested that there were, civilizations that had a reasonably high level of technology? Why won't we admit that to ourselves as a civilization?
Because we have got a very rigid view of what civilization looks like. And I remember this again when I was a child. It was taught to me. It was very linear.
Yeah.
It started in Mesopotamia, then you had the Egyptians.
That's right.
The Greeks, the Romans, and we are now at the pinnacle. The Westerns, whatever. The 20th century societies is the pinnacle of civilization. That's
Historians were so pleased with themselves when they lined it all up.
But completely ignoring Asia.
That's right.
Africa.
Yeah.
The Americas, and obviously Antarctica, right? The Antarctic continent. Completely ignoring it. Now these are all new worlds. Europe was, again, it's like this mindset. Europe was the old world, so old in civilization and all these things, right? And America was the new world, right? New. Australia was terra nullius, the uninhabited land. There was nobody here, only animals. Do you know that? We have a civilization here, which conservatively is at least 40,000 years old.
Yeah,
and there are monuments here in Australia which are completely ignored by the Australian government. Completely. There are pyramids. I mean, that sounds crazy. I get that, but there are pyramids here. There's stone circles.
That's right.
There are all kinds of things. They have walls in New Zealand as well. Dave, because it doesn't fit the narrative.
You're right. So the narrative was broken again. This was actually last year in September when the footprints were found in New Mexico. And they found that an adult and a child were walking along. This is the ones they found. Walking along, and there was a puddle in the footprint of one of the what are they called again? Not megasaurs.
Megafauna.
Yeah, megafauna. Thank you very much. So, in the giant creatures that were found on the planet before the Great Flood, before the huge disaster that wiped out almost everybody again, as recent as 23,000 years ago. So, they found that a young child had jumped into the footprint left by the megafauna because it was a puddle. And it had splashed out the material from that footprint. Now, that child left a footprint in the same material that the megafauna had, left its footprint, meaning that it was soft enough and it hadn't turned to stone. But now, it subsequently got covered by sediments when the large ice sheet had melted, and therefore was covered over, only recently found. Now, that discovery is about 7,000 years back in time from what the accepted belief was. And remember that poor lady who's now selling flowers, right?
Yeah.
She'd made the same. Yeah, that's right. She'd made the same claims that humans were on the continent. Oh no, they couldn't have been. Well, it's right here. Now science is catching up slowly but surely. And once again, just like the fellow in our story, Posnanski?
Posnanski, yeah.
Posnanski. And he'll be right, no doubt. I reckon. And it's all of these people who don't agree because of their either tenure, they've got a grant, it was their whole life's work and they refused to accept any new information. And it's such a disappointment because, Meki, I've told you this story. when I went to high school, we had a reprinted. The date of the reprint of the textbooks that we were reading from was in the 50s.
Nothing new was learned after 1956.
That's right. That was the date. Reprinted 1956. It's like, what? Surely we've learned something since then.
Nope.
Nope.
Our heads are full.
Our heads are full. The old shut up. You know, my bicycle was made of things that weren't in the test. Because, yeah, that was in engineering. That was crazy. So, just saying, you've got to be open to accept what is coming to light, as it could be your detriment, your career detriment, to not do that, to not accept it, to not consider it, rather than deny that it even exists. Oh, that couldn't be possible. Yeah, sure. All right. There was, is it Blessing in the chat room? Mentioned Humpty Dumpty earlier on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This is what those great oafs are like. They're like the Humpty Dumpty. They couldn't get put back together again. They refused the new information, and therefore they are no more. I actually stated that the whole Humpty Dumpty tale was just, that was a tale of the lack of medicine and medical knowledge and experience and nothing more. It's a fear story to prevent kids falling off stuff, because they're empowered to understand, the kid, that they could break stuff that people can't fix. That's what I think. And at no point is Humpty Dumpty ever said to be an egg, although we all presume it.
No. It's just a common popular depiction of Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, that's right. And it makes it playful, Mickey. You can put in a kid's book.
Yeah.
You can't have a regular person falling off a large construct and then...
With a broken head.
That's right, all broken up. Oh, we couldn't fix him. Right? That's the end of the king. Yeah. So it so annoys me. It's beyond belief how much it annoys me to hear that science is just so unwilling to accept new information, especially about this, about our ancient history. And leaving the gap allows for the invention of aliens visiting. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't, but there are ancient stories from all around the world of visitations. And that's completely acceptable because it's myth and legend. They couldn't possibly have ever come in contact with aliens. You reckon? The Dogon tribe. Talk to them for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's all. That's not something.
Yeah, that's right. Sure. So you only need one example, and that's certainly enough for me to conclude that I would believe that ancient aliens, or aliens in the past, the aliens themselves don't have to be ancient, but in ancient times, that we were visited. Absolutely clear as day. The terminology that the people used in their poor little vocabularies at the time were not able to describe, using what we know today with technology, any methods or mechanisms in which they were able to achieve things. But certainly stories and depictions, and what we know today, like Mickey said at the opening of the show, what we know today using our current knowledge, when you look at those stories, it's easy to see through the words that they use because they didn't know what they were. It would be very difficult to describe a computer to someone in the 30s. You couldn't even do it. Even going back 90 years, you couldn't describe to someone, well, it's like a machine, but it hasn't got any moving parts, you see. It's just kind of solid, and there's a piece of glass, and you can touch the glass, and it answers anything that you want. Any question you ask it. Besides getting rushed off to a stake to get burnt, how would the living people try to write that into a petroglyph? How would they write that? Well, how would they describe that? The smartphone you had in your hand.
Well, that's the thing, right? Couldn't really do it because it doesn't make any sense.
No.
There's no context. There's nothing tangible. This person. I mean, they used to call them flying shields, right? I guess flying shields. We call them flying saucers, but the accounts of these shields were flying through the sky.
That's right.
Or some such, or chariots. They were chariots of the gods,
chariots,
or whatever, right?
Yep.
Even
depicted in art as like comets with people in them chasing each other.
Completely. I mean, that's just astounding if you really think about it for a second. I mean, the concept alone is astounding for that time, right? But maybe that's what they saw. Right? They saw a fireball come to the earth, and someone came out, so they figured, someone had to sit there while they were a fireball, right? Maybe.
Guess what?
That's the music, everyone.
This has been David Mickey's Show Inside Out, episode 526, Ancient Aliens Part 9 it was today. So, just to clarify, coming up next is Jer Bear's awesome show, After Hours. Do tune in and call in. Jer Bear will not mind. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.